Good morning, Sangbreeta. How are you doing? This is Steve coming live to my community and audiences from various parts of the world. I wanted to actually create a series of videos to inform them of what different people are doing to nourish and nurture their own communities. You're one of my favorite speakers from Savage Days, and I was quite excited when you told me about what you're up to. So before we start off, if you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Hi, Steve. So lovely to speak with you today, and hope you're having a beautiful spring day in Budapest as well.
Yes.
And about me, well, where do I start? Long story short, I'm fascinated by human behavior. I'm fascinated by the brain, and I'm fascinated by the impact of our behaviors and the way we communicate and how that impacts our relationships in the workplace. So I find it fascinating to right now explore the world of crisis and what is the impact of communication and our behaviors during crisis? How are we motivating and aligning our teams during crisis? How can we ensure that we have a common connecting culture and behavior as teams, as organizations, when everyone is working remotely and during a state of extreme stress rather? How do we establish that culture? So these are the topics that really fascinate me right now. And I think you already know my background is in neurobiology, and I've been fascinated by brain behavior, communication for as long as I can remember. And that's what I do. I think I like to hack human behavior.
Wow. Wow. Uh, uh, yes, you are talking to a number of companies now about crisis communication, about how they should be, moving forwards. This is like unlike anything we've had before. The 2008 recession does not even compare to the ripple effects the COVID-19 is going to have on the global economy. And this, of course, directly impacts every single person there is out there, every company that's out there. So what is your main message now in these times to companies?
There's not one main message, there's so many, right? But I will focus on a couple of them that really matter right now. And I'm focusing a lot with certain organizations on crisis communication. So how should leaders, how should managers communicate with their teams? How do you, in those online meetings, what has to be the underlying theme? And with respect to crisis communication, and I think you and I were speaking about this a while ago, that empathy is so important. And by empathy, I don't just mean be kind or be nice, but I really mean you right now are working in an organization where people are thrown into a state of uncertainty and stress. And because of that, even the most rational, calm, reasonable people, because their situation and their comfort environment has changed, might react to certain stressors in a way that's so unpredictable and irrational for you that you might feel kind of, what do I do with this now? How do I calm this person down? This person who's highly educated and knowledgeable and usually very left-brained is suddenly being extremely stressed and anxious and aggressive. So, these are the kind of scenarios that are coming up in companies often. And the need for our, not only our leaders, but also as colleagues, is for us to not react, but to respond, and to not react to what you see as the stressor or anxious behavior or maybe the aggressive behavior, but respond to the underlying trigger that's leading to such kind of behavior. And I think that's something, it's so easy to say, it's much more difficult. But we really have to keep that in mind as we navigate as teams and organizations through this crisis, because these are uncharted territories and these are rough seas. So I think the need is also for each and every one of us to embody the mindset of the captain of a ship.
Good.
That this is especially useful because not taking names, but if you look at certain political leaders in a time of crisis, they're actually trying to defend themselves by pointing fingers at others. And finger pointing is not what the captain of the ship does, right? The way we behave is we try to protect our people. We have to make sure that right now people feel supported and they feel a sense of tribe and community. So as colleagues, I don't just want to give this responsibility to the leadership, though of course the leadership decides how behaviors will be in the company, but it's the need for every single person working in the organization, from the starter to the top, that we must really think of, this is not the time to blame or finger point, this is the time to build a sense of community, and to also make sure that we don't react to people, we respond to the underlying core trigger of their stress or their behavior. So that's one of the things.
You just reminded me of the Titanic, and not the part that was sinking. It's not the part of the movie or the story that where the ship was sinking, but more the calm and collected manner in which the captain of the ship was able to stand by and kind of navigate the people towards safety. How many of it there were? I'm not going to finger point on the number of boats they had and all that stuff, but the fact that he was able to calmly, collectedly, get all his team to start helping the people into the boats. How many ever were able to get in there? And I'm not going to look at selection and all that stuff, which is a whole different story. But you're right? Every single person is responsible. I'd imagine you are not just talking to senior leadership about this, but you're talking to everybody within HR, within the employee managers level, and saying you've got to start responding to this, from a human perspective, taking into consideration what your team is going through. I'm guessing that's part of your strong message as well.
Yeah, and I think this has a strong ripple effect. So implementing positive behaviors in the workplace has ripple effects, because one person is aggressive to you without need, or they're rude to you, or they're finger pointing, you carry it further without realizing it. The same way, when you are kind and empathetic and with the people in your workplace, it gives you that extra boost to emulate the same behaviors with someone else that you see is facing stress or needs your support. And I think I already shared the story once with you that this was a while ago in Asia. I met with the head of HR of a big organization. And it was so surprising to me when he said, if a manager comes to me and says, yeah, this one person in my team is not feeling motivated, they're going through a difficult time because of some challenge at work, then the HR leader said to me, well, you know what, that's not my problem. And I thought, wow, you just signed the death warranty of your organization. Because if we can't be the captain of the ship that can hold people, can make people feel like they're listened to, that's the least we can do. And a manager is coming to you for support. If we can't do that in a normal situation, imagine now during crisis how many more people are feeling that way. So it's really important for us, especially as leaders, but also as every single link in the organization, to make sure that we at least make people feel like they're listened to, that they're being recognized, that they're being heard. This is very important. But alongside empathy, of course, there's so many more things. Things like, I've also written this in an article earlier, but things like truth is very important. It matters that you have to be timely. Don't wait for things to get too late to break the news, however uncomfortable it is. Oftentimes it happens in organizations, but also you can see it happening across the world, that people don't want to share bad news because they don't want to be the harbinger of bad news, because people end up shooting the messenger, so they get all the wrath. Also, you fear panic and backlash, so you don't give bad news. But then if you wait till it's too late, it's going to be disaster management. Yeah. You will be flung into disaster scenarios. It will take a long time for people to implement the changes that you recommend, and it will be a long while before you start to see results based on whatever feedback you have. So there are so many things at play. But when it comes to how we communicate, for sure, empathy. Also, there are different, for me, what's most important is that the way we're reassuring our customers and clients, we give the same compassion to our employees. So oftentimes we forget that employee centricism is as important as customer centricism. So it's very important for organizations right now to balance both of them.
Any good examples you've been looking out there, companies, how they are dealing with this situation, with the uncertainty of the situation as well? I can give you a few examples, but I'm wondering if you have been seeing the same with your communities.
I'd love to hear your examples as well. I think they would be in addition to the mix.
Quite a few of them. So I was very happy when IKEA decided to be one of the first few companies globally to shut down their warehouses, or I say warehouses because most of their retail outlets are like warehouses, but they wanted to be about the people and their own employees. They have not let go of people, which I love about that, especially the number of floor workers they've got at the IKEA stores. They've decided not to do that. With Burger King, I've enjoyed the number of burgers they've been supplying to the homeless people, to
Yeah.
kids in need. I've seen the same across with EasyJet, not letting go of the people and sending them to training to become health workers to support the UK. I love those kind of stories. It reminds me that humanity is not lost within the big organizations.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you've been seeing the same as well.
Absolutely. And I think I would love to, maybe we can just continue what you said. It really goes to show right now that the focus of success or impact should not be which is the biggest company in the world.
Yeah.
And I will not name the company. But the point is that how we take care of our people really shows what our true values are, especially when things are heated. When we're in a scenario of uncertainty and crisis and stress, the way we take care of our employees really goes to show what we're made of. And I think companies that you've just mentioned, especially the ones like IKEA, it could be so easy to still remain open and deliver across the world. But
Yeah.
they've made a choice, a very tough choice for them, I'm sure. But it's going to positively impact people so much, because I think in the minds of their customers, their respect has increased tenfold.
Yes.
And this is definitely something that we need to remember, not just as organizations. Well, every organization is serving someone, but especially also for the business community, whether there's freelancers or entrepreneurs. I see that a lot on my LinkedIn right now, where I see advertisements saying, or posts saying, hey, we're offering you a 60% discount if you sign up for our June course or our program in June, live event in June, we get 60% off. Or there were actually some hotels in the midst of all this crisis, and people are losing family members, and healthcare workers are stressed, everyone's stressed, and they're saying, oh, book our hotel offer now to get like some kind of discount in May. And I think this is so irrelevant right now. Stop trying to sell blindly during crisis. No one's buying. And also, oops, my phone just fell. But anyway, it's never a good time to exploit a crisis, number one. Number two, people can see right through it. So this is when, however, and I can also empathize with them, because they're afraid of, oh my God, how are we going to survive? Which is leading to them making these choices and writing these kind of promotional posts. So I understand where it comes from. I can empathize, at the end of the day, it helps to think of an actual person. Perhaps this is a man or a woman who has a young child at home and are thinking, okay, how am I going to pay rent for the next month? How am I going to feed my child for the next month? Yeah. So it's also important for me as a customer, because I did realize my instinct was, oh my God, not again, stop trying to sell. The other part of me, I had to consciously think deep and think, okay, no, I need to at least empathize that, okay, this person is stressed. They're doing this because they don't have the means to comfortably relax and not think of of these kind of offers. They're making these offers because they're worried about their rent or their pay or how to feed their families. So I empathize with that. But I would encourage organizations, entrepreneurs, business owners, this is not the time to blindly offer promotions. Really dig deep and think, how can you offer help to the community? Because we're all struggling. We've all gone down this fight together. We're all going to help each other come out of it. But it's really important that we stay in this together and that we stay authentic.
Very nice, and nicely said. In fact, you also reminded me of something that happened. So in 2008, I was still working. Very few people are as old as I am, so I kind of find it funny that I've worked through maybe 3 global pandemics. I say pandemics, it's not true. 3 global crisis stages. Yeah. One was, of course, when SARS became a huge pandemic in 2004, 2005, I believe. Just as I'd started to work in the events business, never a good place to start when there's a global pandemic. But then there was the 2008 recession. but I remember this one. The last company I worked for in Dubai, and coming to the point where you mentioned, right? You don't want to wait till the last second to do this. So I was working for a huge company, no naming names there. And I remember our directors, our global leadership, sorry, our leadership basically came up and said, "Don't worry, there's no such thing that's going to affect us." And young as I was like, "Great, I have a job. I'm lucky to be working during this time." Um, Lo and behold, 3 months later, we were all laid off. We were all let go, not because of anything else, but the company just didn't have the investments, didn't have the money to support the team size that we had. So a team of 1,000 people were reduced to about 100
Oh my
in
God.
in less than 15 days. Uh, I was lucky that I had many options available to me, but I know a lot of the people behind me did not have the same.
Yeah.
And I think, what you just mentioned, be reactive to certain situations, be proactive, sorry, not reactive, be proactive to certain situations, and inform people who are in your network who are going to be affected by your decisions in advance that these are steps you'll need to take.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely get you on that.
And there's a fine line between reassuring people and giving them false hope. And reassuring does not mean giving people false hope. I don't understand why, but there are so many times we get it wrong. And you also often see that I come from a family of doctors, so I'm always in these discussions about, you know, uh, I hear stories all the time. And what really stands out to me is um, when a family is in a state of extreme stress and crisis, of course, with a loved one going through a really bad health issue, what they desperately want to hear is for the doctor to say it's going to be okay. Even if the doctor is trying to break the news that, look, I don't know, I can't confirm, but it might be something, but he's going to be okay, right? But he'll be okay, right? But she'll be okay, right? Oh, it won't be something serious, right? So they're desperate for that reassurance. And it can be so uncomfortable for the person on the other end to say, I don't know. I hope the best for you. You should know that you have the best uh, treatment availabilities and options available to you. But as for the outcome of the disease, we don't know yet. We have to check further. It's so uncomfortable to say that because you can see that person is hanging on by every ounce of their being, but to want to hear you say it's going to be okay. So eventually in the long run things are okay, but in the what I mean to say is reassurance doesn't mean that we give them false hopes.
Yeah.
And we must, as human beings, we must always reassure people that at the end of the day we are going to get through this. At a certain point we will see a new normal. Maybe we go back to the old normal, maybe we don't, who knows. Right now there's a big debate going on. Some people are saying we'll never be back to the same normal. Some people are saying we will. At the end of the day, we got to figure it out. We don't know yet. It's
Yeah.
all a hypothesis right now. But the important thing is that we reassure people to not get stressed right now without giving them false hopes or lying to them or hiding an important piece of information from them for way too long. Because the moment what happens is it's also the leader or the person, whoever's communicating, has to think that the moment you are too late with giving critical information, the moment people find out that you've been giving them false hopes, not reassuring them, but giving them false hopes, your credibility, your
There we
respect,
go.
their
Yeah.
trust and faith in you is gone. It will come crumbling down in that moment, and that kind of damage to your integrity and your reputation will suffer. So
Sure.
going off on a tangent, but I really do believe in this, and I say this so often, I think I say it way too often, is that a lot of times we have people who talk a lot about organizations, reputation management, brand reputation, and I really think the focus should be on integrity management. Think of
Good.
the integrity of your brand. Think of how to manage the integrity of your organization. Because when you think first with integrity, then you are forced and you are compelled to make the right choices to serve your people. When you think of reputation, you only think of protecting yourself first. So always when in a crisis scenario, think of how am I going to show my integrity to my people? What is my integrity? What do I owe my people? What is the kind of information that I owe to tell them, however uncomfortable it is for me? And I think when we lead our choices and decisions with this kind of mindset, it avoids a lot of unnecessary scenarios.
So true, so true. I've been lucky to be working for Insider now for a while now, and you know, when things started rolling, you know, I was having flashbacks from 2008. I was like, okay, wow, what's happening? I was impressed, but also pleased to see our management, you know, open up this talk almost immediately with all the staff. Uncomfortable talk about where, you know, the market's going, what's happening. What I loved about that is, though they gave us, you know, the uncomfortable truth, what's going to happen, how it's going to impact each of us, the company stayed strong in one mission. It's about its people, it's about its community, which means none of the people at Insider would be losing their jobs, regardless of how tough the times went, because the company wanted to make sure that its people were being taken care of. And of course, you know, there were a few things that they had to change around to make sure, you know, we were able to support them just as much, which is, I think, a completely fair ask. But the company basically enveloped everybody, not just at this point in time, but even before, to make sure everyone, you know, coming back to the point you mentioned before, you want to be there for the people, not just during the bad times, but also good times.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that well during the good times, it's going to be impossible as you get to the bad times. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, one other thing we have to keep in mind is we all talk about vision. You know, the word vision itself is a long term. You know, vision is about something that we can see into the future, basically, that we have that kind of foresight. And one of the things we always must remember, because I do think we forget, is this is my understanding of human behavior. And I'd love to know if anybody disagrees with me, but I do see from all my experience, research, observations, that we are people who are more focused and fearful of our short term than our long term. And it's actually Dan Ariely, the behavioral economist. He was in Amsterdam to talk about the psychology of money. He said the same thing, that people are more inclined to invest in things right now that they can see in front of them, like a TV or a car, than they are to put it in a savings deposit because they can't see the money. They can't see it grow.
Sure.
It makes more sense for them to have it in front of them. Why I say this is it's the same mindset and the same psychology that's troubling people right now, because the crisis is right ahead in front of us. It's short term, so it's troubling us more. And it's not easy to look beyond what's going to happen after these 3 months. Think of 20, 30 years ahead.
Yeah.
So if you think of your 30-year plan, which is something I started doing about a month ago, instead of thinking what's going to happen to me in the next 5-6 months, I started thinking, what's my 30-year vision? And which means I'll be quite old by then. But I've never thought of a 30-year vision. I've always made 5 and 10-year plans. But I thought of a 30-year vision, and as I started writing things down, I realized that these 3 months might be a little uncomfortable, and yeah, they're painful in some ways, but they don't really take away from my grand vision of 30 years or whatever I hope to, you know, create, the way I want to impact and the way I want to use my life and my abilities to create impact. It doesn't really change much. These 3 months are a bit painful, like, you know, a really painful band-aid being taken off. So this is also something we must remember and always try to discuss about in our teams and organizations, that yes, there is stress, but it's a short-term stress. What is our vision for the next 30 years? What's yours for the next 20, 30 years? This little period, this short period, however painful, is not lifetime.
Sangbreeta, because we have a time limit on this interview, but I do want to touch in the next 5 minutes if possible. Going into, let's say, when things become normal again, and I say that in the sense that people are able to meet each other. We're not going to have this effect of having to social distance as much. And I'm hoping and praying, I'm looking at everything when I say that, that'll happen soon. But when companies get back into, you know, the other side of normalcy, there is a fear of fight response, which is going to kick in, getting into crowds again, getting in around people who may sneeze or cough. They might not have anything, but they may sneeze or cough. So what are companies, or how are companies supposed to be equipped, especially HR and senior leadership, around that? Because that's also part of the crisis is, how do you get out of this mode as well?
Yeah. One of the things is you never know why you're sneezing. And that's one very important thing. I think I shared the story with you as well. I was in the supermarket a couple of days ago, and this one poor gentleman, he sneezed. And someone else literally, I can't say that word right now, I'm sorry. But he said a very bad swear word. So this person sneezes and someone else says a dot dot dot. And I was like, why? What is going on? It wasn't a soft swear. It was pretty loud. Like, how dare you come to the supermarket while you're sleeping? And I also had another friend who was walking somewhere, and there was a gentleman walking the other way, and this man suddenly sneezed, and my friend immediately started thinking, was the wind towards me, against me? Will the sneeze particles enter my breathing apparatus? So yes, people are wary, but again, at the same time, I think the moment organizations are reopened, or maybe they can start doing these online tutorials or whatever, I'm sure you can find many of them, or the HR can give them themselves, about understanding human stressors. Like, for example, help them understand the limbic brain. We all have a lizard brain that gets triggered by stress and makes decisions that can be unpredictable, irrational, illogical. They're the kind of decisions people make. It's pretty much the same brain that hoards toilet paper, that makes emotionally volatile decisions, and is quick to jump to very extreme conclusions.
Yeah.
So these kind of workshops, or it could be just a talk by that company HR or whoever they wish, that's not the point. But if they can just make sure that their team is aware of their own psychology, of the way their brain is thinking and why it's thinking, how rational is this thought process. One very important thing for us is every time you think of something, you feel something, you're afraid of something, I always say, I respect you, or you should respect your thoughts and feelings, whatever they come, because they're authentic to you, but also keep in mind that not be the reality. So however afraid or stressed you are, of course, respect that. It's authentic to you and your sense of being, but that's not always the reality outside of you. So if there's someone who comes in, who sneezed, or who belongs to a country that had a very high infection or death rate, does not mean that you have to, isolate them, or you have to be terrified of them, or you have to start thinking, why is this person in the company? He belongs to that country, and that country had a huge number of COVID deaths. Who knows? Maybe he's carrying it as well. I actually had a team went through this kind of situation. So it's very important for people to be prepped in their mind, to be aware of their behaviors, of the triggers of their behaviors before they walk into a live human interaction scenario again in the workplace, because people are wary, and they're going to be seeing each other without this knowledge of or awareness of why we think the way we think, why we behave the way they behave. We're going to be in a very wary, non-team oriented, non-collaborative perspective, where every person pretty much has a Kalashnikov pointed at each other, ready to fire the moment someone so much as cuffs,
Sure.
So it's really important for us to be aware of what triggers our psyche.
Thank you so much for that, Sangbreeta. Thank you so much for this morning of amazing talk. You have given me quite a bit to think about. In fact, I'll be releasing this video shortly and sharing with my community, because these are things that they need to listen to as well. And the purpose behind these interviews is the same. Thanks so much for this morning. I hope to have a second round of interviews with you after the one with Chris, so that we have a few more talking points. And I look forward to even hearing more on your LinkedIn about how you're taking crisis communications forwards with your own communities, with your own with the companies and clients you're working with as well.
Sure, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Steve, and we're going to have many more wonderful conversations ahead, I'm sure.